Joining us for the first time today, welcome to the Singapore Art Week Art Symposium. And for those of you who have been with us over the course of today and over the last 2 days, many thanks for staying with us. It's now my very, very great pleasure to introduce the next panel for today and our last session for today and for the symposium. Now, this last panel is called Grounded and Ready for Takeoff, Flight Plans for 2021. And it's presented by another art publication based in Singapore, our friends at Art and Market. Now, the panel will be reflecting on the experiences of the art community over the past year and on the learning points which have emerged. Dialing in from Dublin, we have speaker Ms. Josephine Kelleher, and with us in person, we have speakers Dr. Yin Yun Chen, Mr. Khairuddin Hori, Dr. Adele Tan, and moderator Ms. Nadia Wang. So once again, if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to submit them at any time at all through the Pigeonhole Live website. Now, the Pigeonhole URL and event passcode will also be flashed during the panel session for your easy reference. Pigeonhole Live is a really simple, interactive mobile website where you can submit questions to the panel very, very easily. All you have to do is on your smartphone, tablet, or laptop, just launch your internet browser and enter www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar. All right, once you've done that, you need to key in the event passcode, which is ARTSYMP 2021. So once again, it's ARTSYMP 2021. You will then see all of the panels in this event, and then you just need to select the relevant panel, which is the last one today, and submit your questions. So with all of that out of the way, let me hand you to Ms. Nadia Wang, your moderator for the panel. Nadia, please.
Thank you very much, Usha. And hello, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon for the panel discussion, Grounded and Ready for Takeoff, Flight Plans for 2021. So I have two big questions for today's panel. What can we learn from our experiences in the past year? And what is a feasible plan for us to collectively work together for a brighter future? I would first like to introduce the panelists for this discussion. We have Dr. Adele Tan, Senior Curator at National Gallery, Singapore. Adele, hello.
Hi.
And Kai Hori, who is Director and Partner of Chan Hori Contemporary in Singapore.
Hello.
And Dr. Yin Yun Chen, who is a visual artist and runs a drawing, animation, and installation practice. Hi, Yin Yun.
Hi, Nadia. Thank you for having me.
And finally, we have Josephine Kelleher, who is Facebook Open Arts Lead in EMEA and APAC. Hi, Josephine. It's good to see you. Hello.
Hi there.
Okay, so let's start. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you there. Thank you, Josephine. So I think let's start by talking about your projects. Adele, could you start, please?
Okay. Can we get the slides on? I think we want to go to the one before. Yes, that's right. Well, I work at a museum, so it's a little bit of a dinosaur. And last year has proved quite challenging in terms of getting both the physical and the digital together. So one of the things that I was interested in doing, partly because it's the 5th anniversary of the National Gallery, I wanted to find another way to perhaps make use of the voice, the sonic capabilities that were thus probably untapped. So we created a podcast with writer Shamini Flint, and leveraging on the most favorite topic of Singaporeans, food, and looking through the works in our collection and kind of fashioning a story out of that. And then also leveraging on our local poets, bringing snippets of that in. And then from there, we also were doing or toying with the idea of having a digital exhibition, having a new platform to which we can present more works to the public. Next slide. So this is not yet launched, but it's coming soon in February. This is a new platform that we're exploring where we present digital art exhibitions. We are starting with this first exhibition called Stories in Light for Modern Photographers in Singapore. And of course, we started with this because photography is a medium that is, has suitable affinities with the digital medium. I won't say too much about this because we haven't officially launched it, but please keep an eye out for this on the National Gallery website. And then lastly, I just want to turn our attention to a series of exhibitions that the National Gallery and Singapore Art Museum kind of came together to foster, which is the proposals for novel ways of being, which is one way of thinking about how our largest institutions or art institutions in Singapore could help or foster a sense of community and solidarity, giving opportunities for artists, curators to put on their own shows, because there wasn't also that much lead time, but everyone came together and actually proposed really interesting things for us to look at, think about, and talk about. Yeah. So that's it for me for now.
Great. Thank you, Adele. We'll get back to all of these projects later. Next, we have Kai, who's going to talk us through some of the projects he's been involved in as well. Kai, please.
Yes, thank you, Nadia. We've been doing quite a lot of projects, actually, since the past 1 year, but today I will highlight just 3. Out of the 3, I have to say that 2 of them were planned just before COVID, or the restrictions started happening in March, right? So the one that you're looking at right now is a collaboration with furniture house from France, Liège. And how this started was that I met the curator. It's quite interesting that this furniture house has a curator. The curator from Liège in Paris last year at the Asia Now Art Fair. And then in Paris, they even show solo exhibitions, in their boutique. So, and then they have this habit of, or this culture rather, of working together with commercial galleries in cities where they have their boutiques to show art by artists living in that city in the boutique, as a kind of a show of appreciation for local art and culture. So then we started talking, and we end up, we have had a couple of changeovers right now, and the next one coming up with their new line of furniture will be soon in February. So we have curated a new group of artists to show there again. What has come out of this was that the conversations and the events that, it's not just artwork for sale put up and, to complement the furniture. So for example, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a sort of a roundtable with 6 architects from Singapore. And the conversation were about the art scene, in Singapore and also overseas. And, we would like to imagine that these architects are our peers, us being curators and them our peers. So we had quite interesting conversations. And then the next project that I think we had that created quite a lot of excitement and a lot of learning for us technically, because I handled most of the technical parts of doing this, is the Shangri-La Art Podcast, which we launched together with the first Singapore Art Gallery weekend last year in November. And we first launched it as a live stream, and it lasted for like 14 hours until 4 in the morning. I was like totally, but we had really good response from this. Listeners say they wanted to listen to more, and we are now working on our second season with 5 people involved in our next project, which is New Wave. This is a digital platform. 9 international artists responding to traditional weaving. So you can see this right now on show at the National Museum in Singapore and also online. This is the screenshot of the website. So you can see newweave.co and you will see all the animations. So yeah, that's what we've been up to the past couple of months, or at least in this art week that you can see.
Thank you, Kai. That's a lot of things that you're involved in. We'll get back to them as well later. Next, we have Yin Yun. Could you tell us about your projects?
Hi. Yeah, so I'm mostly known for my charcoal installation works, but I found myself last year turning back to my roots, which is animation, digital animation. So the recent piece that came out is the one that you see on the screen, and it is a collaboration with a singer-songwriter called Chayam Chong, a very young one, and he does a lot of pop music and indie pop, I would say, indie pop music. And we were commissioned by the Asian Art Institute for this piece. And this piece is called, we went with the punny sort of like hindsight is 2020, since it's launched in Singapore Art Week in 2021. And it's just a story about how the ennui of the lockdown, the kind of restlessness, and we're trying to capture that. The fun thing about this project, which was a very small 2.5-minute animation, was that it pretty much broke the Google Ads algorithm. It was banned 3 times, appealed 3 times, and each time it came back, the ban gave a different additional reason. So we escalated to we realized how interesting it was to use social media to disseminate animations that they could not read satire or irony. And so therefore what they got off, a lot of the backgrounds that you see here are actually screen captures of like news articles that was shown during the lockdown. So somehow they were reading more and more into the imagery that we chose. So that was one project that I worked on. The second project isn't launched yet. It is an 8 minutes experience, both cinematic as well as VR. It's done with 3 other collaborators, a musician called Javon Chandra, a CGI artist called Alex Gallet, and an Unreal Engine developer called Coraton Deborah. So we did an 8 minutes, kind of explosive, sort of, but very calm and slow imagery that we did twice. So we did once as a cinematic long screen, and we also did one in VR. So we were trying to experiment to see what differences that would feel like, experiencing a visual piece with sound that's exactly kind of the same, but with different technology. And one of the challenges we are facing right now is how do we actually show VR during a time of a pandemic? How do we actually, engage in that way? And are there other options for projection and creating that kind of immersive sort of space? So this is one piece we've just finished the work, so now we are in the stages of trying to find how to move this work into the public. So this is the piece. And the other things that I did, I actually was preparing for a show in Paris for last year, which didn't happen. And it had a lot to do with, so there were like the 6 scarves that you see is my wingspan or my arm span, and it was a play on the idea of touch, the fact that you can't touch people now. So what happens if you wear someone's arms and it looks like they're kind of either keeping you warm or strangling you, right? Because that's the feelings behind it. And the piece next to it is, I've done 2 short animations called Furious Fires, and it's kind of abstract pieces of nature, kind of responding to all the other disasters that's happening beyond the pandemic. And this was shown at the Buenos Aires Moving Image Biennale that then moved digital because they couldn't hold it in the physical. So these were the pieces that I was working on.
Thank you very much, Yin Yun. And last but not least, Josephine, could you share with us the projects that Facebook Open Arts is supporting in Singapore?
Yes, very nice to be here this morning. I might just quickly describe the program that Facebook runs globally to begin with. So Facebook Open Arts is an initiative that has existed for about 10 years. Beginning as an artist in residence, primarily an artist in residence experience. So artists would come on site on our larger campuses and spend weeks or months researching a project and developing an idea which they would then execute on campus. That as our offices grew globally, became much more of a commissioning initiative where we would look to find artists who were really making an impact in whatever city Facebook was opening a new office, and we would invite them to make large-scale immersive installations. We've worked with about 800 artists globally. In Singapore alone, there are 36 installations in the Facebook office. in Singapore. And that continued last year, but it was one of the challenges we definitely faced, bringing artists into office spaces, moving artists around because they were not able to travel, able to move around. And I'll speak a little bit more about the challenges, but also the opportunities that came out of that. We also have a design program for designers in residence, and we produce, design, produce and distribute about 200,000 prints, screen prints and bits of various other design materials throughout our offices globally. We have an education program, workshops program internally, where we bring artists into the environment, and the employees engage in various creative activities, conversations around art. Our public program, which was really beginning in earnest last year, was probably the most challenged by the events initiated by COVID. Here's an example, I think, on screen of one of the projects that we collaborated with Mesh Minds on Singapore Art Week last year, where we were able to work with a number of artists and a number of technical experts to create an augmented reality experience and a tour of Singapore, and a new way of looking at amazing static artworks and seeing them afresh. This year yes, thank you. This year we have again looked at Singapore Art Week for the amazing opportunities that it offers in seeing art in new ways, and collaborated with 2 curators and 10 artists for bus stop art. So enabling the documentation and the video, creating video facsimiles of the tour through Singapore, celebrating art and in the public arena primarily. So that was a super exciting project. So we continue to work globally with a team of curators. Generally, you would be speaking to my peer, Pei Xuan Tan, who looks after the development of projects and the commissioning of artists throughout the APAC region. But we have curators based in New York, Austin, Texas, San Francisco, Dublin, London, and we work to try and connect as much as we can with the local scene, and build a global narrative around a local experience, essentially.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for sharing all of that. And I think now we can open up the discussion. I think from all of your sharing, what I'm gathering is that everyone has been very prolific in their output. And I'm just wondering if this is a typical year in terms of how much you've been doing, or have you been doing more than before? Adele, could you start, please?
Well, it does feel more than before, because we have to juggle both realms, both online and in the physical world. But the challenge is trying to find that sweet spot between the two. And of course, as a museum looking at modern art, it has to also deal with the constituencies that are a bit older, maybe more averse towards technology, and then trying to then also use technology to find new audiences for the old forms of art that we present at the gallery. So it's been also a really steep learning curve, trying to get hold of the appropriate amount of technology without being completely lost or overshadowed by it as well. So we are still, I think, finding our feet with this, probably not as adventurous as Kai or Yin Yun, but we have been, I think, slowly also leveraging on younger artists who are interested in technology, right, and bringing them into other spaces at the museum in like the Keppel Art Education Center. We work with Yoshiyun to make that, a digital ink experience, which is interactive and kids love it. Yeah. But otherwise, it's been a year where I really felt like it's a pandemic. I thought I could take a pause, a rest, but it hasn't been the case. Yeah, rest has somehow evacuated itself from the equation.
Right. I think there was a rest period, and then it made everyone really antsy, and then everyone started to think of ways to get over that. What do you think about that, Kai? Because you've been very experimental with your projects as well.
I
Could you
think
talk about that?
the most significant moment for us, right, was last year when, just as soon as lockdown was announced,
Yeah.
we also announced that we are leaving the gallery space. I think that is, we've been quoted on that many, many times in the media, I think, and that is one significant contribution, I think, to the scene. But because of that, we have been doing, aside from, actual projects, right, a lot of it has been the thinking process. We are not done yet. We are not happy yet with what we've achieved today with the projects that we have put out. We think that all these recent projects that we are doing and we have put out should become catalysts and filters for the most optimal curatorial idea we have yet to put out. So we are working towards more projects by the end of this year, that we hope will truly show the public what we mean when, we decided to leave the white cube kind of anchor space.
Yes. So what came first, the decision to leave that space or the pandemic? Because it seemed as if it was motivated by the pandemic as well, but I'm not sure if it's just like the timing of it.
It was, I think the pandemic helped us to make that decision.
Okay.
But we as a team, right, we always have been thinking about this model of a commercial gallery or gallery being a white cube. We love experimentation. We love to do all sorts of things and work with all sorts of partners, and that's always been on our mind. Do we really need this space? And so the pandemic kind of like, okay, now you can make up your mind now and make the call. So it helped us make that call.
Cool. And what about for you, Yin Yun, as an artist? Do you feel that you became more productive during the period?
I think I was going through a bit of an existential crisis.
Right.
It really felt like that. It came out in the form of restlessness and ennui, hence the work.
Yes.
But one of the things I was really thinking about is I'm used to making digital. That used to be what I do. But what do I want to add to the oversaturation of content that's already out there? Like what's valuable and meaningful and honest to put out there that someone else might find some resonance with, because we're not short of content. We in fact are all struggling with getting the word out there, getting heard, marketing, PR. Like these are the things that I find were pretty much forefronted, like on the digital space.
Yes.
And trying, because after all we had was the little screen. It's not like we could leave the house and look at other things. So, what would I make that made sense, that reflected what I was going through? So that was a lot in my mind. Aside from the arts I teach at Yale and US, so that was also quite an interesting struggle. And how do I deliver the content that I usually would, but in a completely different format? But I mean, I grew up with tech, so I'm really, really good with it. But the question is how? Even if you have the equipment, the way you tell the story will definitely change. The way you pause and allow students to absorb, the way you keep their attention. So I feel like I had to learn performance on a screen, which I am not a performer and by any stretch of the imagination, to really try to entertain, to keep their attention going for a 3-hour class on Zoom.
Yes.
And I know you feel the same way.
Yes, because I also teach, and it's definitely a challenge to engage the students without giving up what you're teaching, the content of it. But at the same time, you're also going through this existential crisis, like, is what I'm teaching still relevant? Right? So I wanted to go to Josephine now to ask about Facebook Open Arts experience in this time, because I think it's all about building community through creativity, offering new ways of thinking about ourselves or the community at large. So in this period, have you seen more applications or more projects that have taken a different turn from before the pandemic?
Yes, I think everything took a different turn. I think I agree with the other members of the panel. The past 8 months have been exhausting in many ways. I think that during this period of time, there was no value in making any assumptions that the thing you did or that you always do or that you might do would or could work. So there was a huge amount of intellectual examination of different contingencies, which is exhausting. But I think on reflection, it did lead us to new opportunities and new ways of supporting artists and institutions that we mightn't have had the opportunity to consider in the past. While we'd been very focused and committed to, tactile experience and craft-based work, even though we are a tech company, I think that over this period of time, we found ways of exploring new projects with artists in the tech sphere. So we are developing residencies around our VR product Quill and opportunities for artists there, and seeing a huge amount of delight and curiosity with these new tools and new ways of realizing or enhancing existing projects. Month on month, I think we had to go back to the basics and unpick a plan from start, which was a very testing. There was vulnerabilities in many ways with the artists we were discussing projects with, and also inside the team itself. Are we doing as much as we can possibly do at this moment in time? But I reflecting on the year, I think we have seen both in our conversations with institutions and artists how creative and innovative everybody has been in this opportunity, and we've seen anecdotal or heard anecdotal stories of new audiences finding their way to different art forms through a digital experience. So yes, it's been a lot about digital experiences over the last 8 months, but it's been largely opening up of opportunities. So in effect, a very busy, very anxious, very ambiguous, loaded with ambiguity, but a lot of incredibly positive outcomes.
Well, thank you for that, Josephine. I think also it seems as if everyone has an appetite for risk now that we didn't have before, right? Because it seems as if since everything is new, we can afford to take a risk, and it's not going to be us falling flat on our faces. And even if we did, it's fine, because we're all sort of learning from each other. Because I imagine that when someone does something interesting out there, we're all looking at that and thinking, wow, that's amazing. What can I do to replicate that or to build on that? Has that been your experience as well?
It's actually quite difficult also trying to keep up, right? A lot of things also become obsolete very, very quickly. And I just also want to avoid falling into, the whole of this, fetishization of your digital tool. I think I share Yin Yun's concerns about what exactly are we putting out? Is it meaningful? Because there's a lot of online detritus, and everyone's fighting to be heard in a very crowded market. So I also want to come back to also reinstating what is also important, the experience of space, not just the online cyberspace, but how do people behave in a physical space? Because eventually we still have to get out of our homes, right? And interact and behave and socialize. So what of those aspects? How do we also kind of coexist with the different sets of decorums, right? Yeah. So that's something that we have to, I guess, as a museum navigate. We have been very used to speaking at physical forums, but we somehow haven't found a way to translate what we want to say, I guess, online. Yeah, and how to talk to, say, our Facebook audiences without feeling like scared, right? Because the internet does not forget. In a way. So I guess we're a bit anxious, a bit fearful about if there are mishaps, everyone's going to record this. Yeah.
It feels like it will live forever and not be ephemeral. What about for you, Kai?
Well, I've been watching developments on the other side, the non-art side, right? Of course, if you remember in the past few months, there's been a lot of movements, especially in the US, protests against galleries, mega galleries, museums, like close down the museums, close down the galleries. And, me, coincidentally, I'm the president of the Art Galleries Association in Singapore, and that, I'm interested in that. And I'm interested in, the change of presidentship in the US and the stock market, how it's been reacting to that. And I think all of this, we have to weigh all of this in together with whatever that is happening in the art scene as well, because there's such a thing called art collector, right? And then they are involved in all these other parts of what's happening in the world. And having, left the permanent gallery space ourselves, it made me think whether in the future, would artists need galleries? Since, it's not just exchange of commodities for living artists, especially, but also an ideological shift right now, right? Like Yin Yun says, if I were to make more art, what should I make right now? What is relevant right now? And if an artist were to make an exhibition right now, does that artist want a gallery to represent him or her? Maybe the best thing to do is artists should come back together like the old days, put up their own show, say what they really want to say, sell it to what they think is their works are worth, and then cut out the middleman, and then take more power for themselves, and or do whatever projects in whatever format they want to, and not be restricted by the white walls in a commercial gallery, and all these arguments with like unethical practices and stuff like that. Personally, I believe that it will happen. Artists will take matters in their own hands, like quite soon.
Got it. I think you're talking about how, everyone's a multi-hyphenate now, right? So you're not only like an artist, but a curator, a writer, and sometimes your own gallery manager as well. And I'm just wondering also sometimes whether that's not a good thing too, because then you have to wear so many hats and you can't then focus on your own art practice. What do you think about that, Yin Yun, about this move towards, doing everything by yourself?
Having done quite a lot myself, it's a lot of work. I had to learn like business management and accounting just so I can pay my taxes. So, it's a lot of work. And I as someone who has, done collaborations independently, worked with spaces independently, worked with institutions, as well as teach, as well as work with commercial galleries, I see value in all of them. And I still see a need for physical space, because I echo Adele's, sentiment about how we respond in physical spaces is quite important. And that includes navigating the art market as well. It's not it's actually quite opaque and difficult to understand unless you're someone who actually has experienced how it works to learn from. And that's one I see as quite valuable as someone who's just interested to understand how things work. I also find that I had more conversations with filmmakers, animators, tech artists, like programmers during my last year, and having conversations beyond the art circle, because there are a lot of things that I had to figure out how to do that I knew I didn't have the skills for. And you just have to reach out to the right people and learn about what it means to, say, distribute an visual artwork that's digital right now. Maybe digital experiences and exhibitions are not the only way. How about film festival circuits? How would that work? How about digital symposiums and, say, for example, SIGGRAPH, like all these tech places, South by Southwest, Sundance New Frontiers, like all these other spaces are opportunities for, contemporary and visual artists to explore that used to be a space that was different, because we always considered media as different from the contemporary arts. Right. So I think that's a huge opportunity there. Yeah.
I think it's part of that risk-taking and that open-mindedness for collaboration. We've also seen an increase in interdisciplinarity. So, you're working with a furniture company, for example. You've been working, you've always worked across disciplines, but I think that's become much more accepted. I'm just wondering about your own projects moving forward into 2021. Will we see more of that kind of interdisciplinary collaboration? Maybe through proposals for novel ways of being as well. Do we see, examples of that too?
Well, I mean, the museum has always been collaborative. That hasn't changed. I guess it's also the nature of the collaboration and the power dynamics therein. You know, when Yin Yun was talking about picking up skills, learning, I find it a double-edged sword in a large institution because where is learning and where is outsourcing? So you have a lot of people coming in, being your agents, but are people learning from this opportunity or are they just pushing the work out to someone else, you know, to deal with it? So in a sense, the collaboration as a kind of a buzzword is always there, but I guess we need to really unpack how it is we have been collaborating. Yeah, what have we taken in, what have we given back? Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I have some questions from the audience. So I think this relates to what we've been talking about. You know, the digital approach seems to be, you know, the go-to thing to do and has caused digital fatigue. And what is the panel's view on this, and what is the counter proposal? I think all of you have, you know, projects that exist in the real, right? Do you think that's going to continue? Are you going to keep developing the digital as well? How do you counteract, you know, that digital fatigue for yourself too?
Can I?
Yes, please.
Well, yes, I do have projects that are digital, but you know, I feel that art or artworks inherently has this quality that it calls out to you in person to be present in front of it. Art cannot exist without an audience. You know, so no matter what, no matter how many, even in digital form, you need to sit in front of your laptop or your computer to look at it. So the physicality is never totally gone. You know, it always demands that you come and see me. You have seen Mona Lisa 10,000 times in pictures. You still want to go to the Louvre and look at it in,
Yes.
you know, in person, right? So I think physical will never go away. You know, we want it. It wants us. You know, the work wants us and we want it, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about that physical interaction with your peers and with the people who, you know, put up the artworks and just sort of being that physical space together. What about for you, Josephine? I mean, with bus stop art, that's definitely within the community, you know, with people who are just waiting for the bus, part of their daily lives. Will we see more of that coming up from Facebook Open Arts moving forward? Projects
Yeah,
like that?
I mean, I really want to echo what Kai just said there. This craving to be in the presence and to experience in real time just doesn't go away. And I think there is also a sort of a kind of ritual to that trip to the museum that is kind of you know, it's very spiritual and very personal, and it's still very palpable and very people want to go back or they want to experience that. So we're never going to not have this desire, I think, to experience in real time. The project that we did with Bus Stop Arts is we have also done similar projects with a large mural campaign in the United States around the recent Get Out the Vote and election campaign. So the idea of bringing art into the everyday and creating kind of collisions or encounters, whether it's in a conversation context or in real life experience, is really important to what we do at Facebook Open Arts. The workshops program that we run internally with our employees is very similar. It's like, how can you get closer to the thinking behind an artist's practice or a piece of work? So, you know, that idea of like opening up opportunities where the art becomes more tangible, whether it's intellectually or physically, is very important to what we do. So yes, you will see more projects similar to, and I hope as good as, Bus Stop Art from Facebook Open Arts in the coming while. I think a number of people on the panel mentioned collaboration, and I think you, Nadia, also mentioned a craving to come together, you know, to have conversations that are unplanned. So a lot of us are sitting at our computers having very deliberate conversations about how to do things and what we could do. But that idea of bumping into somebody and having an idea just unfold, I think is another thing about real life experiences that are very, very hard to create digitally. And that's something certainly that I value, is those incidental conversations that turn into the best projects you could possibly imagine.
That's such a good point, that spontaneity that happens when we are just, bumping into each other at an event, for example. Well, I have a last question for everyone on the panel. What is one resolution you have or a goal you're working towards for the year ahead?
Maybe I'll answer that
Go for it.
first. One of the things that I realized after having, quite a few years of a lot of works and productivity is I've suddenly really appreciated slowing down and making a work and not chasing deadlines. And I think that's something interesting that happened during last year, is because there was a huge turn towards the digital, and all your physical works are kind of like, okay, it's just going to sit in my closet for a while. It suddenly meant that to make a physical work, I actually had time. I had time because the deadlines were turned towards the digital, so I was still rushing. But suddenly I had more space to consider these materials. I mean, I was having my existential crises, but that gave me more space to really kind of understand what I'm doing and what it is that I'm working with. And I find, and this is, I guess, is a resolution, so it's a hope, I can only hope, is that the physical works that I consider and make, it's thought through in a longer time span. And I say this because I notice with my students this digital fatigue. My students are like early 20s, they are like the tech generation, and they are tired. And so they started embroidery, they started like picking leaves, they started going back to nature and to materials and the sense of touch and tangibility. And that was such a beautiful turn for a group of students who have no problems with digital at all. Yeah.
Very cool. Kai?
Well, unlike Yin Yun, actually, we've been like super swamped with deadlines and, new projects, ever-changing deadlines and all this kind of thing. And I don't think it will stop, right? My resolution, as myself, as well as, together with my team or Chan Hori, I think we want to have more conversations with artists and non-artists as well as peers in other creative sectors. Like the roundtable with architects that we had, although private, it was really, really powerful for us, for each other, I think. And then we want to have more of such things. I would like that we, not just me, but also Deborah, curator who worked with us, like to write more and then put out more articles out there, to share our views and have it writing as a means and publishing it so that it is recorded. And therefore, we could have actual discourse, like we put our names and there, it's not just gossip. So we want to have the feedback, and also most importantly, I think curatorially as well as working with artists, especially artists that we work with, to put out meaningful projects, like projects that are not just for the sake of being out there, for commercial reasons or something, but more go deeper, have more meaning, more relevance in the times.
Definitely. Thank you, Kai. And what about for you, Adele? For you personally or for you working at the museum?
I'm not one for making resolutions because I'm very bad at keeping them. But one word that I've been thinking about for a while is accessibility. We assume that everyone has an opportunity to get to the online experience, but actually no, not everyone does. And the quality of their online experience is very fractured. It's not the same. So part of me also wants to, I guess, get out of the art world, get out of my little comfort zone, my little buddy community. I just also want to know what's, rest of the world is like out there. Yeah. And on a very simple level like language, right? Can we stop just only using English as a mode of communication? Are there other ways of talking? And suddenly there are also other people with, other needs, say, the non-sighted, the deaf, other ways that we can actually open up all these apertures for them. Yeah, I think we haven't really touched that one yet.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Adele. And last but not least, Josephine, what is your resolution for the year ahead or a goal you're working towards?
I love Adele's admitting there that she wasn't one for resolutions. I opened my year also saying, that the idea of a resolution or a fixed plan was something that I was so exhausted with for the past 6 months, that staying open and staying in a fixed mind, in an open mindset about what might happen on a weekly, monthly basis was the way I was going to approach this year personally, because so many plans and hopes from last year just got stuck. So this year for me is about really staying open and curious and not locking into anything fixed for starters. I think from the point of view of the program Open Arts at Facebook, our intention really is to bring artists into more and more critical conversations, internally and externally. We're supporting The World Around, which is a symposium around architecture, design, and environmental issues at the end of this weekend actually, in New York. So the idea of listening to the interrogation and consideration that artists are bringing to this, the question of technology and the implications of technology in creative practice and in life and in living. So that's a kind of a goal for us, I think, collectively on the team, is how many ways can we listen closer to artists and creatives and bring them into critical conversations at Facebook.
Thank you very much, Josephine. And thank you, everyone. It's been wonderful to hear about everyone's experiences and plans. Great to check in with each other. And yeah, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much. Thanks, Josephine.
Thank you so much, Yin Yun, Kai, Josephine, Adele, Nadia. Thank you. It was such a wonderful, uplifting session. And this really takes us to the end of today's program and to the end of the inaugural Singapore Art Week Art Symposium. Our deepest thanks go out to all the panelists and moderators for taking their time out of their busy schedules to contribute to this event. We had 33 speakers from all over the world, and it was our great pleasure and honor to host you in Singapore. I think Josephine made such a great comment about this craving to come together that's come out of the pandemic, and I hope with this symposium that we managed to achieve some of that for all of you who've joined us both online and in person. Now, if you've missed any of these discussions or you'd like to catch them again, all of these videos will be available on the SISTIC Live webpage and later on the Singapore Art Week website, and you can catch them absolutely at your convenience. Now, on the slide right now, you will see the URL and QR code for a survey on your Singapore Art Week experience. Please do go ahead and take that survey if you wish. If there's anything you'd like the organizers to know about, any feedback, any further questions, you can put all your comments there quite easily. Now, your participation in the survey also entitles you to the chance to win something in a lucky draw, and we have some very attractive prizes for you. So all that remains for me to say is really to extend a huge thank you to everyone who's been a part of this project on behalf of the National Arts Council of Singapore, on behalf of Plural Art Mag and all our other partners. Have a great weekend, and we hope you continue to enjoy the remainder of Singapore Art Week, both online and at the physical events which are continuing to take place all over the city. Audience members at Victoria Theatre, once again, please do not rush to the exits and wait to be ushered out of your seats by our good ushers. Thank you very much, and goodbye.